Welcome to episode 36 of the Brainy Business, Understanding the Psychology of Why People Buy. Today's Behavioral Economics Foundations episode is about the N in nudges, incentives. Ready? Let's get started.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. Last week on episode 35, I gave you an introduction to nudges and choice architecture. I explained to you what a nudge is and how all of us are choice architects, whether we realize it or not. So it's best to be informed. If you have not listened to that episode yet, you should definitely add it into your queue. It has some groundwork that will be helpful as you listen to the rest of this series. The word nudges is an acronym for the categories of nudging, and we're breaking those down episode by episode over the next 6 weeks to showcase different aspects of choice architecture and nudging. Today, we're starting with the N of nudges, which is for incentives. The plan for this episode is to start with a brief explanation of what incentives mean when it comes to nudges, which will primarily be done via excerpts from the book Nudge by Richard Thaler and Sunstein, as well as some of their research papers. I will then provide you with a bunch of different examples from various industries and business examples to show you how this can work in your business. So, links to those papers and anything else pertinent, including there are a lot of different foundational episodes I'm linking to here in the show notes, including framing, loss aversion. You can find those show notes within the app you're listening to, or by visiting thebrainybusiness.com/36. You'll also find a very helpful freebie worksheet to help you work through nudge incentives on that page. If you are on the Brainy Business email list, you can get this or any freebie on the super secret subscribers page of the website. There is a link in the email you get from me every Friday. If you're not yet on the list and would like to be, simply sign up for the freebie at thebrainybusiness.com/36 and you'll be automatically added. If you're in the States, you can sign up by easily texting the word Brainy, BRAINY, to 345-345. You'll be added to the list and get a free copy of my ebook, The 10 Behavioral Economics Concepts You Need to Know and How to Apply Them, as a thank you. All right, let's talk incentives. When you first hear the term incentive, you probably think about compensation plans or other incentives to buy. Those promos that include loss aversion and scarcity. But wait, there's more. And that can be part of it. But incentives in the context of nudges and choice architecture are much more complex. If you remember from last week, you are a choice architect if you present options to people and indirectly influence their choices. This is everything from where you place food in the line in the cafeteria, to an opt-in form on a website, to doctors presenting treatment options to a patient. We are inundated with choices in our lives, and because our brains are lazy, we don't put in all the effort required to make the best decision every time. Well-structured choice architecture can influence the way someone makes a decision, the actual choice that they make. And bad choice architecture can compel people to avoid making any choice at all, which is, ironically, still a choice. A nudge is something that helps someone to make a choice. This is everything from the order things are appearing on a list to the wording used within them and, yes, incentives. You're probably familiar with the concept of supply and demand. As the price of something goes up, companies will produce more of it and demand will go down. Supply and demand fluctuate in predictable ways and are like two opposing forces in an intricate dance. When pricing an item, whether it's a product or service, the goal would be to find the perfect price where you have the greatest profit and the demand equals supply so you do not end up with extra items on hand. This is, of course, easier said than done, but proper incentives can help to encourage sales when you understand how they work. The tricky thing about incentives is that they're never one-sided, and our lazy brains don't tend to think about all the proper aspects of the choice presented. We don't realize who's receiving an incentive beyond ourselves, and we don't really think through all the incentives impacting each decision we make. It's never as simple as, do you want this? Yes or no? There is much more to it than that, and good choice architects understand how to structure the nudges and architecture to do what is best for their business. So, how do you figure out what all the incentives are and how they work together or against each other? You can start by asking these questions. Who uses, who chooses, who pays, and who profits? As I'm sure you can appreciate, those are not likely the same person, and each question can have multiple answers as the choices get more complex. Here's the plan for this episode and the rest of the series. I'm going to have one seemingly simple example that's going to be a constant throughout the series, which I'm going to introduce to you here in just a minute. In each episode, my plan is to introduce the concept like incentives or defaults, and then revisit this example to show you all the aspects of its choice architecture. So we'll come back to this one example in all 6 of the episodes so you can see how it works within choice architecture. And then I'll provide several other examples of that particular nudge in action in varying situations and industries to help really round it out and give you some other areas to consider in case this one doesn't apply to your business in just the perfect way. Sound good? All right. So, what is this seemingly simple example? Air conditioning. Last June, my husband and I bought a new house. The house was built with heating installed, but not air conditioning, which isn't uncommon for the Seattle area. And according to the builder, a setup was within the house that would make it easy and more affordable to retrofit and add air conditioning whenever we were ready. Great. Sounds easy enough. Well, we really wanted air conditioning included in the house when we bought it. It wasn't an option, so we decided to wait and see what things were like in the house for the first summer to determine if we really needed air conditioning since it's expensive and if it was worth the money to install it. Like I said, it's not like we're in Phoenix or Las Vegas or an area where air conditioning is a mandatory in the house. We get hot days, but it doesn't usually get too bad. But let me tell you about this last summer. It was hot. I went back to look at the historical weather data to make sure I don't exaggerate for you here. Over half of July and August was over 80 degrees with the high at 96. There were several days in a row over 90, and without air conditioning, it was uncomfortable, to say the least, in this house. And I don't have the benefit of going to an office during the day to enjoy their air conditioning. I get to just sit in the heat all day. I also discovered my office is on the sun-facing side of the house. And while my lovely big window is really more of a burden on those 95-degree days. Suffice it to say, we already knew air conditioning was an important purchase and it was going to be making its way into the budget earlier than expected. There's no way we are going to go through another summer in this house without it. So yesterday, we had someone come out to do our evaluation and estimate for the job. During this process, I learned that the cost of air conditioning is set up using a fairly standard formula based on the square footage of the house and the number of vents, and if there's anything crazy they need to do, like in a really old house that requires more labor. But in general, there isn't really a choice to be had because they aren't going to underinstall. Since we're doing central air, it's not like I get to say I only want to pay for air conditioning for one part of the house or do the downstairs now and the upstairs later. It seems like a pretty simple black and white choice, right? Do you want air conditioning or not? Yes or no? Of course, it's not really that simple, which is why this air conditioning example will be featured throughout the series. So if we use our questions for the incentives aspect of nudging, we need to look at who uses, who chooses, who pays, and who profits. And as a reminder, this is the foundation of the worksheet that's available for you at thebrainybusiness.com/36 if you want to download that and follow along. So the person who uses is me, the homeowner. My family and I will use the air conditioning for years to come if we choose to buy it and suffer the heat on those few hot days if we don't. And I suppose we could consider the resale value. And so there could be future users that are homeowners, but the benefit and to why I'm buying in that case too, is again for resale value. So it's about me using the air conditioning and its benefits. Who chooses is, again, my husband and I. While this seemed like a simple choice, there are actually a lot of variables to be considered, way more options than meet the eye. My husband and I have the choice, the burden, to decide if we want to cool our house. And if so, we have many options to choose from. We could buy a lot of fans and put one in every room, but that would also increase our electricity bill. We could buy bags of ice to fill our bathtubs with. We could choose to stay in hotels on the days it will be really hot to take advantage of their air conditioning and spread out the cost when we need it, instead of paying up front for an air conditioning unit. And once we decide we want air conditioning, there are multiple companies to choose from that all have their own pricing structures and units and processes that can add even more choices. For your company, think about if you would have said it's a very simple choice. It's a black and white, a yes or no, I want it or not. Try to think a little bit deeper like I've done here and look at all the choices someone really has. It is often much more complex than the surface level. All right, let's move on. Who pays is, again, my husband and I, and we pay on either side of the choice. We will either pay upfront for air conditioning or pay on the hot days with sweat and complaining children. Okay, let's be real. I complained a lot this past summer too. So I guess my husband pays in living in a house with grumpy people. Now, who profits? This is the company who sells the air conditioning units. But there are different levels of profit there, I'm sure. The guy who came out to bid the project probably gets some sort of commission for making the sale. The overall company is making a profit because they need to stay in business, and the companies they buy the parts and basic units from will be making profits as well. And down the line for all the things they buy from suppliers and their suppliers. For simplicity's sake, we will say the air conditioning installation company profits, the guy who made the sale profits, and their manufacturer profits. As I said, this is a pretty easy one on the surface, and it's similar to a lot of companies out there. So maybe you're already starting to see the parallels in your business. You can take a minute now if you want